All right, so I am Sean Horrobin. I am the administrator and communications personnel here at Trinity-St. Paul's, and I have the very special honor of having a conversation here with Stan McKay, who was the moderator of the United Church in the early 90s, and will be joining us for our In Concert with Creation weekend, April 22nd and April 23rd. So thank you very much for being with me today, Stan.
Thank you, Sean. It really is an exciting opportunity for me to be able to spend time with John Bell and learn more about the Celtic spirituality and wisdom. Um, I'm also very grateful that the choir at Trinity-St. Paul's will be working with some music that remind us of our relationship to creation.
Mhm.
So I think it's a very exciting opportunity in the middle of climate crisis.
Yeah, it's a remarkable synthesis of ideas and expressions, I think, that are planned for this weekend. I'm in the choir as well, so I can tell you that's been an intense journey. I mean, the music itself is very challenging, but the words present some very challenging ways of understanding our life as Christians and its role in creation, and even things to do with the sacrifice of the Mass and then the breakdown of the earth and climate. I mean, it's really heavy, pretty heavy theology.
Yes, and I guess my one regret as I saw the words to the Mass, to the presentation, is that we will not have much time to have conversation
Mm.
about about that particular piece of art, um, and what it tells us about ourselves.
Yeah,
But I'm looking forward to that evening.
yeah. All right, so I thought I would just try to pick your brain a little bit on some of the specifically Indigenous justice issues that we are always thinking about at TSP. They're very much on our minds, but they're especially meant to be thematic to this weekend that we have coming up. And the first one that is very much on people's lips these days, especially in Toronto, because I don't know if you've heard about it out there, but we've had a play here that was sold out, I think, almost every night called The Land Acknowledgement. And it was an Indigenous artist presenting um, some pretty pointed critical feedback he has about how land acknowledgements are done and what they mean for people. And it's caused a lot of people to really have a conversation with themselves about that. So I guess I'm going to ask you, on the whole business of land acknowledgements, what are your thoughts on this? And are they as simple or as uncontroversial as people like to think they are?
I have had the experience of at first being quite excited about the notion of land acknowledgement, and so initially I was quite supportive of the process. Of late, I have not seen the play, but of late, I think uh, words are being said without any real context, without any real uh, possibility of action.
Mm.
So we have, a fairly elaborate. I know at the local NHL hockey games in Manitoba, they have a fairly elaborate land acknowledgement process.
Mm.
But it would seem to me there is no implication or real awareness of what that might mean.
Yeah, I was just at a Raptors game here, and I'll say the same thing. It was almost a multimedia event. They had these incredible images that they were putting up, and
Mhm.
they were using all the right words and saying all the right things. And on my mind, I was thinking, well, you're a multi-million dollar organization. I mean, maybe in the billions for all I know. Um, I would love it if at the end of that land acknowledgement, they then said, here are some of the resources we are dedicating towards rebuilding that relationship or trying to address justice issues. They didn't say anything, and as far as I know, there's not much that they are doing. But yeah, it seems like a real trap for people that my way of articulating is I say sometimes it feels like somebody who has said, well, I want to quit smoking, so I'm going to start smoking filtered cigarettes instead of regular cigarettes. And you sort of go, Well, that is a step in the right direction, but it's a very small step, and it's not enough to get to get the result you're looking for.
Yes.
Um,
Adrian Jacobs, who was the director at the theological school in Manitoba for Indigenous peoples,
mhm.
uh, once said that, I've stolen your car. Would you like to have a ride?
Yeah,
As a way of summing up, I think the land acknowledgement approach is to finding some just way to be in relationship.
yeah. Well, okay, so if I may pivot a little bit into not unrelated topic, but still keeping with the weekend. Um, I think a lot of people in the world right now have very much forgotten, for a lot of reasons, that we are in the midst of an incredibly urgent, emergent climate crisis. I've been thinking lately that COVID, issues around the economy, and the absolutely insane tone of politics, especially in the United States, but even in Canada, have really pushed out of people's minds an awareness of what's going on with regard to the earth and the very location in which we're trying to live our lives. Um, do you feel that things like this weekend that we have planned help people refocus on those issues? Um, and then related to that question, do weekends like this or workshops like this or intense events, retreats, are they a role that the church can play in addressing the climate crisis?
Um, I think the church does have a role because of the church's recognition, um, having made apology for the history of mission. I think having discussed various aspects of the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the church. Um, but I think the church really has to work quite intensely at reframing the conversations
Mhm.
that these are about justice, about change, uh, and they're about faithfulness. I think that that aspect and the weekend at Trinity-St. Paul's really, I think, is an opportunity to struggle with that possibility, um, so that phrases like "For God so loved the world," uh, uh, that are repeated so often in gatherings of people of faith within churches, I think have implications again, and it is almost in the same vein as land acknowledgement. We say the nice words, but the aspect of that having implication for how we live together on the earth. Really, I think the use of the arts, the use of music and dance, and I know the big drum will be at Trinity-St. Paul's this weekend
Yep.
for the gathering. All of those things, I think, open possibilities for reimagining what action we might take together.
Yep. I think the role of the arts in a lot of this, as an artist, I find myself often feeling conflicted because the arts can distract you from the problem sometimes. And I worry sometimes that's what we have a tendency to do with virtuous art that's out there. But I also am reminded sometimes by fellow artists that the other role of art is to expand awareness and consciousness. And I think, again, this mass, for example, the way it juxtaposes the texts and everything, some of it is really very challenging. I have to say there were parts of it that when I initially read it, I was kind of upset by how the poet had sort of mushed around with the words. But then if I take the time to think about, well, why am I upset? Then I start to turn a little bit and think about these issues in a different way. So yeah, no, I do see what you're saying there. It is pretty critical. And I guess that leads us to the next thing I was going to ask. I mean, the big word on everybody's lips is reconciliation. I've now heard through many people that you often talk about reconciliation being it's not just human to human, there's a bigger dimension to the whole thing. So I'm wondering if you could maybe just speak to that a little bit.
Well, I think that to begin with, I would say that the word reconciliation, as I've studied it, is a word that uh, implicates us in some sort of compromise as Indigenous. Uh, it's not a very liberating word in my mind. It assumes some kind of compromise on our part. And I think we will have to stop making compromise in terms of our relationships and speak truth um, as we understand it. So the colonial occupation of the land and of our people is a kind of is a kind of genocide, and people have argued about what that might mean. But I think reconciliation then becomes a very deep question about how we relate to each other. And I think in the Cree understanding from my history, I would say that the relationships we build need to be inclusive. And we worked very hard at developing inclusive society. And the United Church has worked very hard with language to try to make the language of our texts inclusive. But reconciliation is really about, I think, a holistic approach to defining our place as humans in relationship to the whole of creation.
Mhm.
And that's a better place to start than trying to deal with our differences. Because, again, the history of the church, in my understanding, and the history of societies has really been about cloning
Mm.
people in terms of behavior and understanding. So our what we call education systems in the society, including our schools of theology, are really places of uh, attempting to carry on the colonization, and the relationships then become um, the holding up of the values and the perspectives of the powerful.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how we move away from that, but I think liberation is a part of reconciliation. Liberation from for all of us. In talking with friends here in the community on the reservation where I live now, my home, we are always reminding each other that we are all colonized, and the way we think, even as we look at our own values and teachings, are very much about the impact of colonization on the way we act and the values we hold. So I think it's about all of us, and all of us need assistance, and that's why I look forward to the weekend in Toronto on Earth Day, to be
Yeah.
about the business of being amazed again about creation and about each other, and being positive about potential for our learning from each other. And that to me is reconciliation.
Excellent. Well, I mean, with that statement, I think that's a great note to wrap this up on. I want to thank you so much for making time for me to do this, because I've had this whole process of being a part of the planning group, and you're spoken so highly of by so many people, and I've yet to meet you. And so I'm looking forward to being face to face when you finally get here. And this little virtual face to face has been really great. It's been very enlightening for me. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Sean, for this and for being a part of the choir.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy the beginnings of spring out there.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.